I wanted to review Heavy Rain at some point. I also don't want to replay it, which is good, since each time you do it gets worse. So, let's just review my memory instead. It's been about 5 years since I touched it myself, maybe 2 or 3 years since I watched a Let's Play. So, let's take a crack at it, see how much of this video is wrong. First off, a history lesson though. You've no doubt heard of this bloke, but that one's David Cage. He starts Quantic Dreams and makes Omikron, the Nomad Soul. And it's terrible. Absolutely dreadful. And so, he never made a game again.
Oh no. You see, video games are idiotic, childish, and made by the image industry for the plebeian commoner child.
So he makes Indigo Prophecy, Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and is now making Detroit.
These are no video games. They are our tool. They drums interactives.
Sod off, they're games, each and every one of them. There is that whole wider argument about walking sims, Telltale Games, visual novels, that they're not really games. I don't give a toss about this argument. These things are games though. You know why? Because this man don't want them to be. Heavy Rain then. Heavy Rain I think is widely accepted as the best thing David Cage has made. If you genuinely like it, it's Cage's best work. If you don't like it, it's as close to good as he has gotten, riddled with missed opportunities and flubbed delivery. For my money, Indigo Prophecy is the best thing Cage has made, but that is because it crashes and burns so fantastically that I find it entertaining. Meanwhile, Heavy Rain just kinda peters out. Beyond Two Souls, lastly, is the most consistently well handled, but it's also fucking boring. Cage, for me, is at his best when he's fucking up his own style. So, Heavy Rain is a murder mystery interactive video game. It advertised that you could play as 4 characters who could die at any time, and the story would keep on going in their absence. By the way, this video will have spoilers. So in Heavy Rain we can play as Dreary Dad, Drug Cyborg, FBI, Cage Sexbot Model 7 Type A, Hero Fucker, and the Killer. It opens with Dreary Dad in his not-so-dreary days. Despite the fact he has some fucked up motor functions that render him tank-like, he's made a pretty good life for himself, living in an impossibly nice house with his wife. Unfortunately, he filled it with 2 children. That is partly his wife's fault as well, though. It's one of his 2 abominations' birthdays, I could never remember which one. After prancing around this modern nightmare a bit, Dreary Dad uses his kid's birthday as an excuse to have a tutorial of all things. Sorry, did I say birthday? I meant buff day! Raw, strong dad! Then we go to the mall. The birthday boy keeps wandering off, for some reason leaving the mall, and Dreary Dad decides to teach him not to do that again, and tag teams with Killer Card to deliver the roadkill body slam. It works too well, however, and Jason never wanders off or jaywalks again. He died. 2 years later, Dreary Dad is fully formed, picking up the survivor from school. You know his life is in shambles because his house actually makes sense. His wife divorced him and his bizarre French offspring is in a constant state of ennui.
You know, Dad, what happened to Jason wasn't your fault.
After a day of neglecting his kid, Dreary Dad blacks out and comes to outside a construction site with an origami crane in his hand. Alright, ending twist spoiler. The killer's brother died here, and his dad refused to try and save him. So whenever the origami killer strikes, Dreary Dad blacks out and awakes here. The killer was across the road watching when Jason monumentally fucked up, and this inspired him to kidnap kids, stick them in a hole during the rainy season, and put their dads through trials to save them from drowning. So far, the dads have either died trying or thrown in the towel, which did little to dry them off. So 2 years later, the killer is bored and asks himself, hey, that guy who dived in front of a car to save his son. I wonder if he'd risk his life to save his son. There was meant to be a subplot about Dreary and Killer forming a psychic link at this point, but that plot was removed because someone close to Dave said it was stupid. So, why is Dreary Dad here with a piece of origami? We cut to the killer, and he's on the trail of the killer, gathering evidence from his former victims. You figure he'd be able to solve the crime pretty quickly, but he's a thorough guy.
Doesn't Jeremy's father live with you anymore?
He disappeared.
Wait, hold the fuck up. The dad here died? And he didn't return the kid? The fuck's up with that? I'd argue that dad risked his life. Oh well, let's just save the mother's life and feed her baby. Good going, killer. We cut to Sexbot. She's a freelance journalist who won the fucking lottery. God, if this is a freelance journalist, I can't imagine what palatial estate David Cage lives in. Anyway, this is a dream sequence, which is here to establish her insomnia and sleep troubles, as she dreams about the quintessential David Cage experience of showering and attempted rape. The amount of attempted rape in her waking life is no less impressive, if impressive can even be the right word to use here. She wakes up, and she wasn't dreaming this fucking place. Anyway, this is also she can shoot off to a motel, because she can only sleep in motels. But why is that important? Cut back to Dreary Dad. He's at the park with the survivor, who since learned not to walk away from his parents. After playing with him for a bit, I already learned this shit, Dad has one of those pointless blackouts and oh dear, that leaves the son alone and vulnerable and oh Christ, it's gone. We file a police report, but all it seems to do in the long run is make all of the police think it was actually Dad. Which Dad also seems to think, considering his trips to David Cage's impression of a psychologist, he thinks he's fucking nutso. And his wife doesn't have much faith in him either. So to dodge the press, he checks himself into a motel. And that's why she's important. He also goes and picks up his kidnapped son's starter pack, featuring several fun-for-all-the-family obstacle courses that will lead him to either Sean or an early grave. He's also scared of crowds now. Luckily not cars though, because he'll need one for what's up ahead.
Take the highway and drive against the traffic for 5 miles.
Well, this is just rubbing it in. Fun fact, you can fail every prompt on this road and make it out alive, since characters can't actually die until a certain late point in the story. Some challenges can be failed and that will have repercussions, but for the most part this is a game that will allow you to coast. And that's how the two meet. Rather than going and calling the police, or an ambulance, or both, Sexbot decides to patch Dad up and double down her own investigation of the origami killer. Alright, last character, Drug Cyborg, FBI. He's also on the trail of the killer, but as his name suggests, he's got a bit more going on than the average agent. He's got a pair of RE glasses that basically do all of the police work for him. The problem is, they're also slowly killing him. But he's also assisting and being assisted by the local Philly police on the case, so he gets partnered up with Blake.
I'm not sure that's entirely legal.
Call the cops.
The problem is, he's also slowly killing him. Blake is the kind of character where there's such a cunt you go, no, he won't be the killer.
I shot him.
Yep. Looks like you did. Can't say I'll miss him.
I won't be given that satisfaction. Drug Cyborg is also on a drug to aid with the use of his glasses. But that too is slowly killing him. Someone upstairs fucking hates this guy. So if you want his good ending, you have to do all of his police work at great speed. By the way, I mentioned Blake and Sean. I have remembered all of the main characters' names, but I went with suitability rather than accuracy in most cases. Dreary Dad is the most boring character, so he gets the most interesting chunk of gameplay to compensate. He has to evade the police, complete the trials, and woo Sexbot all before his kid drowns.
I'm the origami killer.
All of this while also having the belief he may well be the killer. He's giving himself a lot of credit, to be honest, believing he's driven and intelligent enough to rig up all of this during his blackouts. For each trial he completes, he gets a few more letters of the address where his son is being kept, and these are the best scenes in the game, though they do range from actually quite boring to pretty interesting. With the finger chopping scene probably being the most well remembered, and for good reason. You can make it as painful as you want. So the killer tests everything from willingness to cause collateral damage, to self-mutilation, willingness to kill, and willingness to die. I'm also going to give Cage some credit here. He's actually pretty good at chase scenes. Infinite ammo weapons besides, these are probably the most well done parts of whatever he touches, and tend to be genuinely entertaining. Or if you decide to fail everything, hilariously goofy. The implementation of button prompts this time around is also less shit. Rather than the Simon Says of Fahrenheit, where you can't actually watch what's happening, now you're always watching slightly to the left or right of what's going on. And what does everyone else get to do? Well, since this is a mystery, everyone else has gone fishing for a whole school of red herrings. Sometimes they even go after the same one, since they're all competing for it. Sexbot investigates the origami killer as a journalist. Each scene she walks into a place, and you get to play a very easy game of Spot the Rapist. Oh look, I bet it's him. Ah, shit, he's just a murderer. Oh wait, I was right. So she gets traumatized, gets nowhere closer to the killer for the most part, then goes back to the motel to fix up Ethan, who from her perspective must be the biggest masochist going. I mean, that must be what she likes about him, because I can't see anything else. Maybe she likes him because she thinks he's drowning kids. Drug Cyborg and the Antichrist just tend to get beaten up for their troubles, both externally and otherwise. Once again, they go after several people far too dull to be the killer, including Dad. Yeah, you can get Dad arrested at least twice during the plot. If he gets caught a second time though, he's out. Because we can't have him dying like the ad said. The killer teams up with a prostitute whose kid he killed to hunt down himself, and they wind up on the trail of a copycat killer. It's time I talk about a feature this game has. You can read the character's thoughts in any walkie bit, either to get some hints, insight into how the character feels, or a reminder of what's going on. Since we know this guy is the killer, you're not meant to at this point in the game by the way, there's a big reveal moment, his thoughts should be pretty fascinating. Well, not really. This is a mystery that does not benefit from a replay in any fashion. The reveal does not recontextualize anything. In the course of investigating, they're going over letters the killer sent to his victims' families. The killer recognises the typewriter used in their creation because it's right there. So they go and talk to a bloke who runs a clock and typewriter emporium to ask if the killer bought typewriter parts from him. You know, drum up a lead. The bloke dies. He's killed when he leaves the room for 5 fucking seconds. And the killer scrambles to clean up evidence of them being there so the police don't slow down their investigation. The police will most likely get you, and summarily let you go. It doesn't actually change anything. The game is slightly faster. And oh, guess what? The killer is the killer, as it's revealed later on. The killer, whilst being played, warped off screen to kill Alfred to cut that thread loose, whilst the prostitute was there with him, and all of his thoughts are pure lies. Not even misdirection, lies. So, about that copycat killer, he's a bloke called Kramer. I remember his name because of this line when we arrive at a house party.
What a joint! Kramer must be loaded!
Yeah, his dad must be in middle management. We piss off the Kramer family, they bite back, Shelby guns down about 20 armed guards, and naturally Dad Kramer has a heart attack, and off we go. Prostitute is later removed from the plot. The killer may or may not have slept with her. And in the scene that's meant to be the big reveal, we have him burn all of the evidence he collected. And it's at this point you're thinking, "Aw, he was the only one I liked." So I feel I'm doing well so far, but I forget how Sexbot and Drug Cyborg get on the actual killer's trail. I don't know, they find out a kid died on a construction site years back. Kramer was there, I guess he must have actually been a bricklayer or something. Then Sexbot finds the mother of that dead kid, and wahey, she points the way. Meanwhile, Drug Cyborg puts together a car, a flower, and a watch he sees in the police station, and pieces together the killer was a cop. If you take too long to do this, he dies of a glasses overdose. And the killer sees the endgame approaching, and ushers Prostitute out of the plot so he can have a final showdown. Sexbot, meanwhile, goes to the killer's house totally alone and gets caught for her trouble. Luckily, since it's the endgame and he doesn't plan to come back, he locks her in his secret weed den and sets his house on fire. Apartment, fridge, ground, gravity, fire, Sexbot is bloody indestructible. By this point, I am numbed enough to accept that that worked. And Sexbot can either ring up Dad or Druggy to tell them where Sean is, in case you decided to fuck up either of their stories. So yeah, Dad can fail every trial, and Sexbot can just point the way in the end. So, everyone who's still kicking goes off to get the kid. It's probably everyone, since this is a game where you have to work harder for the bad endings. Dad and Sexbot are first on the scene, followed by the killer, followed by the police, and in last place is Drug Cyborg. The police are so gung-ho, they're ready to open fire on Dad the moment he's in sight. This might seem stupid, but you've got to remember, how does he kill? That's right, drowning them in rainwater. Look around, it's fucking pouring. This is a high-intensity situation. You know, it's a good thing it never stopped raining partway through, otherwise the killer would have needed to give the dad an extension. Killer walks in, congratulates Dad if he's made it this far for being the very dad he was looking for, and rather than asking to be adopted, decides he's going to kill him. Because he's busted? Why is your house on fire? Unless Dad is the only one who made it here. Then he surrenders and asks Dad to kill him. Please, Edgar, and that bullshit in the comments. By the way, that poison Dad could have drank in the final trial, it wasn't actually poison. He isn't using rubber bullets, so I don't know what he wants. Drug cyborg FBI runs in, saves Dad, and the two have a giant scuffle on the least convenient bit of architecture they can nab. Meanwhile, the kid pulls a fast one on Dad for fucking off at the park. Right, back in the hole with you. The killer falls into a hole, and the police decide to overlook all of the crimes everyone committed in the course of this adventure, since I guess it solved a bigger one. In the ending I remember getting most often, Dad and Sexbot do indeed end up together. They brought the kid along as well, which is pretty stupid. They had the perfect chance to get rid of him. Drug Cyborg is now a celebrity, which works out well, seeing as he already has a drug problem, and the prostitute is more than a little upset. So, yeah, I just finished editing the video, and I don't think I was that wrong. Like, I wrote the script off the cuff and then went to edit the video, like, looking at footage I recorded 5 years ago. I suppose a lot of it did stick with me, that's surely a good sign, but I don't think it stuck with me because it's good. I think it stuck with me because it's kind of funny how flimsy it actually is. Like, me and a mate did play this a lot when it first came out years ago. Like, we both got pretty much the same endings, wasn't that much trouble to get. I don't know. Anyway, I hope my viewers will forgive me this little indulgence of a video. I just wanted to make a video on Heavy Rain, but didn't want to actually touch the thing. Next up is Xenos 2. A big thank you to my patrons. You will not be charged for this video. Like I said, it was an indulgence. Yeah. Final thoughts. Laugh at David Cage from a distance.